your host, Cain Stevens. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Cain Stevens Super Show. I'm your super host once again, Cain Stevens, and we have another awesome guest on our hands. He is only a stone's throw away from us here in luxurious Lincoln, Nebraska. And if you threw a stone far enough, you'd probably hit him in the head. And he's over there in O Town. So he's on. It really is a cool podcast, and we'll get into it. But I was recently on his show, and we talked about some devilish stuff and all this. It really kind of scared the crap out of me afterwards. We'll get into that more. But with that being said, let's give a round of applause for my guest, Jeff Kalasky.
Hello, Mr. Cain.
Hello, welcome.
The demon Cain. He has returned over the airwaves of our spirit box. Welcome back, Cain.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for the acting of that. I felt like kind of an idiot because you guys hit me with kind of this mini script, and I hoped I didn't like disappoint you guys. Did I do it?
That was such a great episode. We all loved that. That's part of our favorite. That's our favorite part of the show. A lot of the times is the intros where we get to be a little bit goofy, a little bit weird before we talk about something that's more often than not a little serious. So I love that part. Then you did a great job, man.
Your show was probably the most entertaining of all the shows that I've been on a lot of podcasts. I've been a guest for me, and it was I just liked the format. I liked your sister. I think the other girl, was her name Molly?
Yeah, Molly.
You guys are all great, man. It was entertaining. It was just a cool show. I mean, I had no idea that I was in it for the long haul. Like we were going to go over the whole documentary type deal, but I'm glad we did because so for the listeners out there, here we're talking, blabbing about it already. Let's at least say what it is, right? Jeff's on a podcast called Talkumentary, and basically, they go over documentaries. They have different guests. I assume it's like mine, right? Where you pick a documentary, we all watch it, and then we all talk about it, and you guys like go through it. But man, it's even if you don't like documentaries, it's a heck of a show, man. It's just to me, it's entertaining.
Thank you. Yeah, it all kind of started because I was literally watching a documentary and going, I wish I had someone to talk to about this because, you can watch as many movies as you want. And generally there's plenty of people that have seen it. Have you seen the new Marvel movie? Have you seen the new, whatever it may be? But a lot of times, unless you're in a circle that directly deals with documentaries, which who the hell is, you don't really have anyone to talk to about that. So I thought, well, hey, let's all get together, watch the same documentary on our own, and then come together and talk about it and talk about what we thought was good or bad or funny or weird or scary or spooky or totally corny. And then, that's when it's fun to also bring on guests like you who have a little bit different perspective and can also bring new light to that. So that's kind of how it all started and how it's all going. So.
Well, and wackiness kind of ensues, I mean, if you're anything like me, and I'm sure you guys, I could tell that you guys are, I do commentary for everything anyway. So it's like, it's probably annoying to my wife, but we'll be watching documentaries, we'll be watching shows, and I always have color commentary for everybody. I always have these ridiculous things to say. So it's like, it's refreshing to have other people who are into that. But the one that we were on in particular, though, and you guys should go back and listen to it, if you haven't already. It was basically it was about the Ed and Lorraine Warren deal. It was about the Devil Made Me Do It trial and all of that. And it was like the reason I brought it up, we had talked about it a little bit, is because I'm super into the paranormal, right? I'm also a man of faith. I don't like to push it on people, but I have my beliefs. I came up into it later in life, And I know there's a lot of people out there that don't believe, and that's okay. But when I watch stuff like that, to me, it further enhances my ideas of
Yeah.
how supernatural like the Bible and the Quran and all these books are. And it's like everybody's kind of talking about all this crazy stuff, and it's like a it's kind of like on Beetlejuice, like the book that they find, for the recently.
Mm.
It's like, man, it's like this strange manual where it talks about all this crazy stuff. And so when we got dug into that, man, it was just like when I listen back to it and I hear like all the audio, man,
Uh-huh.
it still gives me the creeps, dude. It really does.
Yeah, yeah, and that to speak to that a little bit, that was one of my favorite parts about that episode that we did, and kind of recapping that documentary with you, was your faith, how that meets your paranormal, interest, or whatever you might want to call that, weirdness, I guess.
Yeah.
And where those meet, because to me that's a really interesting connection, because it's not that hard, and I don't think you find it very often. Normally it's like, maybe I'm wrong, maybe your listeners will be like, what are you talking about? There's a ton of people who are Christians who are also, believers in the paranormal, but it does kind of go hand in hand, because you're talking spirits, you're talking a Holy Spirit, you're talking demons and demonic and possession and things like that, and it kind of does go hand in hand. But a lot of times I feel like at least in my experience, which is not very much, you you end up going, if you're not a believer in the sense that you would consider yourself a Christian, you may be a believer in the demonic, or the paranormal, and they don't really go hand in hand with being a religious person, or however you want to, if that's the right term, or anything. So I thought that was really interesting, and I think it's cool that you have such a interest in both of those worlds. It brings a really cool perspective. So that was, to me, that was a treat on our show.
I think it's because I came into it later in life, when I was
Yeah.
I was a I was around it, but I mean it wasn't like it wasn't something that my parents made us do. Like when I was like 7 years old, I remember the church lady came to the door from the bus. Her name was Helen, and she was like 100 years old. And she and she knocks on the door, and she opens the door, and I told Helen, Helen, I don't think I'm gonna go to church anymore. And I just kind of slammed the door in her face. And it was like,
That's funny.
poor Helen, she probably fell over dead by the time we buried her in the yard. But
Yeah.
I even mocked it, man, growing up. And it's like, we don't need to get into a super religious discussion, but I will say this,
You
my mom,
can if you want.
no, my mom, she would say when I talk about all the paranormal stuff that I need to get away from it. She has that old school kind of
Hmm.
ability to her. But I'll tell you this, like there was one time, it was at my grandma's funeral, actually. The priest, she was Catholic, and the priest who was doing the seatings or whatever, I
Hmm.
talked to him on the side, and he was the coolest guy. He was a Hispanic priest, and he was telling me about ghosts and exorcism and all this crazy, and I had like this really cool conversation with this guy that you wouldn't usually have. And it's like I've always kind of been like a I don't know, like a purveyor of the strangest people anyway. Like they just come to me.
Yeah.
And so it's like this guy was kind of part of that journey for me. And so it's not like he lit it off for me, but I've been around hauntings for a long time. I mean, I've been around family hauntings. We
Hmm.
have clairvoyants who are in our on my mom's side of the family that's Hispanic. There were clairvoyants in the family. So I mean,
Wow.
it's just like a lot of weird stuff going on with me and
Yeah.
my family.
That's cool, man. I mean, that's a an interesting world to grow up in, and then to sort of, you know, I guess, stay on that. And when you talk about, your mom saying you need to maybe get away from some of the paranormal stuff, that's like, well, first of all, if you're anything like me, someone telling you not to do something makes you want to do it. But also, like, that's a very, like you said, traditional way to think about, we need to stay as far away from this, instead of learning more about it. Like it's some kind of a threat to your salvation or something to to pursue the knowledge and put yourself into those worlds. And I think, I mean, you tell me if you think I'm off base here, but I think that's sort of what we talked about with the Devil on Trial, which is the documentary that we watched. It you open yourself up to the potential to being touched in a way that you don't want to be touched by a demon or something. uh Not to sound too overtly creepy or sexual or anything like that, but it's you know that's kind of my guess is like, well, and as a mother wanting your children to stay safe at all times, you're not necessarily going, yeah, go ahead, do the thing that might be harmful to you, because yeah, you experience things. Well, most parents are going to say maybe you should use some caution when going into this. So I don't know your thoughts on all that, but
Well, when we
yeah.
on my show, we talk about religious superstition a lot, and religious
Mhm.
superstition comes into play. It's kind of like when there were strong women, a couple hundred years ago, and
Who
maybe
or which?
but yeah, damn the witch, burn them to the ground because
Yeah.
they have an opinion because they got in the way, that type
Hmm.
of stuff. And it's just like if we could just get away from that. But we still have those people today. That's the sad part. I mean, they're not necessarily in pilgrim costumes and stuff, landed on Plymouth Rock, but they're still acting a fool, like there's still that Puritan
Yeah.
side. And those people you see even on social media, doing their own little witch hunts.
And
I
they might as well have a Puritan pilgrim costume on too, because it'd make things a lot easier if we could just point them out that way.
these people drive me crazy because they use the guise of religion and they dive into it, but all they're doing is just judging and poking at people and trying to get
Right.
people riled up. And those people, I mean, it really grinds my gears. It really pisses me off when I see that stuff. And sometimes I'll respond, or what I'll do is I'll type it out and then I'll delete it, and then I'll type it out and I'll delete it. And it's like, aren't I really just doing what they're doing at the end of the day? So
We call them trolls.
they are trolls, man. I used to run a meme page, like different memes and stuff, and I
Yeah.
used to make a lot of like really awful sports meme. Like the sports world is so vile, and
Hmm.
I mean, you want to see the trolls come out of the woodwork, man. I mean, I every troll want to burn me to the ground over this meme page back in the day. It was so negative, man. I had to get.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's fun until it's not, and then it's like, oh, this is getting a bit personal.
Right? Like you're sitting at dinner with your family and you're like stewing over, John 84756, piece of garbage. You know.
Yeah.
So speaking of social media, we had kind of like a happening today, Did you see that everybody was like Facebook was down for a certain amount of time today and everybody was all up in arms over it and freaking out like their life was over with. How did it affect your life today, Jeff?
Well, it didn't really, because yeah, I have Facebook, and my podcasts have Facebook and everything. But I was at work during the whole thing, and I'm a good little employee, and I try to stay off my phone, at least the social meds, while I'm at work. But my wife texted me and said, "Hey, are you logged out of your Facebook?" And I was like, "Well, that's a weird question. Like, I don't think I've ever been asked a question like that by her before." So, my wheels start spinning like, well, I don't think I ever in my life have clicked log out on Facebook. I think I just leave it up. And I was like, no. And she's like, well, it seems like, they're saying that people are logging out, and then are getting logged out, and then they can't log back in. Or if they do get back in, nothing's there. Um, and so I opened my Facebook, everything looked fine. And that was the last I thought about it until you just mentioned it. So it didn't affect me much at all. Um, but I did see, some things where people are kind of losing their minds. Like, did they ever say what happened there?
No, they didn't, and it's really sad that people are losing their minds over this. Like, it's not like the grid went down and we're like back to the dark ages. It's like Facebook was down for like 10 minutes, you know? Like, big deal. I mean, if I had to guess, I mean, obviously, those of us who like to panic about everything would probably assume that it was either those darn Russians and Chinese or or
Yeah.
some evil spy. I tend to think that Zuckerberg's probably a reptilian of some sort, with dead eyes. And
I
so I,
thought we knew that already. I thought we knew that that was his thing.
I
The
think it's pretty
gray.
obvious at this point, isn't it? But I think that he plays little games with us. I think he does this on purpose. You know, if we were to venture, you know, if we want to talk about someone like, you know, possessing people and stuff, I mean, this guy's got everybody wrapped around his finger with Facebook, man.
Well, is there really, what is the definition of possession? It's sort of like when people talk about magic. It's not necessarily what you see on movies or in, cartoons or whatever, where I'm necessarily making green light come out of my hands and I'm, moving something with my mind. It's more about, what you the power of suggestion, what you kind of convince somebody of, manipulation of, that sort of, whether right hand path magic. I'm not an expert in any of that, but it reminds me of that because is there really that much difference in what we know of as possession being, an entity getting, taking control of or inhabiting your essence or your body or your mind or your soul or whatever it may be? Well, think about what these programs are. Well, it's just a different form of possession in some ways. I think you could argue where this program, be it Facebook, be it TikTok, be it Instagram, whatever it is, but Facebook being, one of the main players there, is that not a form of possession where if if I have this program that is on me at all times, it's taken a lot of my thought. My identity is wrapped up in how I present myself through this filter and how I receive my information and how I give out my information, and it's all skewed in the world of social media. And in some ways you could argue that we have a bunch of little parasites that are shut off or whatever it may be. It damages our system because we've become so reliant on it, and it could also be argued that if that let's just turn it off for 10 minutes and social experiment, see what happens to the world. You know what I mean? And they freak out. Okay, well, if that's even a fraction, even a tiny fraction of what would happen if we say lost the internet, if the God that we know as the internet, this thing that has no real beginning. I mean, there was obviously, but and seemingly no end and no limit. The internet's not one thing. You could wipe the whole country off the map and the internet's still going to exist because it's all there. It's just in the ether now. Well, that's a you can either call it a symbiotic relationship with humans now through technology, or you could call it a parasitic relationship where it's it's sapping some of our humanity based on what it's making us feel about ourselves, or how much information we get, or how much fake information we get, how it's so filtered or not filtered enough, or you could go a million different ways with that. And is that good for us? You know what I mean? And a little glitch in the matrix, which was us losing Facebook for 10 minutes today, sounds silly when you and I talk about it, and we kind of go, "Ooh, the world, back in my day, we didn't have it," and you know, but the world's so reliant on technology, and like, yeah, it is. And even people that don't want to be that reliant on it are. I mean, banking, I mean, phone calls, anything you do, even your vehicles, everything's going that way. And if that were to drop out, we're all in big trouble. And the majority of the world's not going to know how to even move on to the next day. So that was way more than what you asked for, Mr. Cain Stevens. But there you go. You told me to get weird.
That's why we do this show, man. There's nothing wrong with that. All the points you made were great points, and it is interesting because if the grid goes down, I feel like I feel like we're going to be cannibalizing each other almost immediately. You know what I mean? We're going to
Oh yeah.
people are going to be looting each other's houses. It's going to be complete pandemonium. Like it's going to be completely nuts. And I hope that doesn't happen. I mean, I myself, I have a pacemaker. I had heart issues a few years ago, and
Mhm.
to be honest with you, it scares the crap out of me because if the grid went down, I mean, do you think doctors are passing out the next battery when my battery life goes down? I don't think so. It scares me.
Yeah, and I talked about that. So I have a friend of mine at work who's a diabetic who has an insulin pump, and he said the same thing. He's like, if the shit ever really hit, I'm sorry, do you guys curse on this show? I'm sorry. Okay. Um, so if stuff ever goes down and we're in a survival mode or something like, he's like, you might as well leave me in my house to just die because I'm not going to be any good, because as soon as I don't have this little bottle of medicine and a pump that will work to give it, I'm in trouble. I can't keep up. I can't, I'm not going to be good. And there are a lot of things like that where it's like, ugh, we got a lot of people in trouble. Thankfully, I'm the perfect specimen of human male, so I will be I'll be just fine. Obviously, I'm kidding.
You'll
I'll
be
be
like
gone.
Rick Grimes, man. You'll be out there. You'll be cutting
Yep.
heads off. You'll be living the dream out there.
I'll be an Englishman speaking in a rough country accent.
That's so crazy how they do that too. Like, I mean, there's so many great actors out there, and then you listen to them in interviews, and you're like, oh crap, it's another great British actor.
Mhm.
They pulled the wool over our eyes. Why is it that it takes them they're really good at Southern accents? Is it just like something that their dialect can handle, or what?
Probably, or they've just watched so many like rednecks on TV and whatnot, and they just lay it on, and to them it probably sounds so corny, but when they do it, then we're like, oh yeah, you sound American.
Exactly. I have a theory that all British actors are the best actors, right? Like think about
Oh
all
yeah.
my favorite shows. Like my favorite show is Game of Thrones. Like I've watched it probably 9 to 10 times all the way through with my wife, and that's a long haul. And I'll watch it again, to be honest with you. Just talking about it now makes me want to watch it again. But all of these guys are like the best actors in the world, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And just so you know, you've got a common friend in the Game of Thrones. I was a lover of the books, and then the shows came out and loved those too. So I even have a few tattoos that are Game of Thrones related. Um, but yeah, so I agree. I mean, you've got all the Brits. I mean, they must just have, either they're just better actors by nature, or they have better schools or something like that.
It's probably better schools, man. I mean, I I don't know
Yeah.
Omaha. I mean, I don't mean to. It's like we have smart people here in Omaha and Lincoln and
Mhm.
everything. And I mean, I came up through the school system, and it's not like we're not. But if it just feels like around the rest of the world, yeah, I mean, they're pushing them to the max. Like I think kids should have to do all kids should have to do an instrument of some sort. I know that sounds pretty awful, but I think it really opens up. Are you a musician as well?
I am. I have been playing the drums since I was about 12 years old. And then I play a little bit of guitar. I was in a couple different like hardcore punk bands, um, playing guitar. So I'm not a good guitarist. I can play a power chord, and I can, chug along with that's about it. Turn the amp up real loud. But so I don't really consider myself a guitarist, but I have played in bands as a guitar player. So but yeah, music has played a big part in my life.
Man, I've been playing guitar for years, and
Mhm.
playing in bands and singing for years. But I'll tell you what, man, all these years I played guitar, I still don't feel like I'm a guitarist. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's such a great instrument, but it's such a hard instrument for no reason at all, right?
right.
And then if you're into music like we are, you really
Mhm.
start to appreciate like these bands that are like next level, like these guitar players that can just like fly all over the place because you're
Mhm.
like, damn it, my fingers won't move like that. Like, why? Why won't they listen to me?
Right. Yeah, and it's funny because when I feel like when I was a little bit younger and I'm listening to guitar players that are so technically good and I'm going, wow, that's like incredible. Or drummers that are so precise and so fast and so solid. But then as I get older and I go, that's awesome, but it's also it's not just about the how crazy and how impressive you are. It's about how that song comes together. So, I listen to some like outlaw country and things like that. And I go, maybe technically the drums, it's just a bass drum and maybe a handful of chains hitting a snare drum, like doom, tsh, doom, tsh. I'm going, well, that is so impactful in the way that he's picking that guitar and singing those sorrowful lyrics or whatever. And that song was better to me than the song that, 10 years ago, I would have gone, this is boring. If it's not shredding metal on the guitar, then it's not a good song. Like, man, as I get older, uh, my opinion on that changes dramatically. And like restraint is a very good thing in the music world, in my opinion.
It is
Wow,
absolutely.
we're way on the weird side now, man. This is
We are.
good.
We're getting all. That's what we do, man. We kind of just we just go on tangents. I kind of go where I feel the conversation's going. You're a
Good.
great guest, man. This is going good.
Thank you.
Um, I like talking to other musicians about that type of stuff. You're right, the simplicity. Like when I was younger, it was all about metal. It was all about, it as fast and as violent as possible, right?
Yeah.
As I
Which
got
is still awesome, by the way. I mean,
Yes,
let's
I
not
listen
get,
to it, but I listen to it differently. I listen to it like in a nerdy way now,
yep.
almost like, oh, like I can't believe they did that with the guitar. I can't believe they did this little inflection, the nerd
Right.
stuff. But I dig I dig more as I get older, like Neil Young and all that stuff. And I know that's lame to some people, and it can sound really simplistic. I mean, he has a voice, that's not it's not classically like, man, that is just such a beautiful voice. But the more I listen to it, I'm like, man, this guy just has it figured out. Like
Yeah.
him, Merle Haggard, like growing
Yeah.
up, I always loved Merle Haggard because I felt like he was more of the guy that Johnny Cash was talking about. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he was the
Yeah.
real deal.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. Um I as I've been on a real like I'll go back and forth between like what I'm feeling at the moment. I'll do like a month where I listen to nothing but like hip hop, but I'll also go, you know, uh a whole month or however long, listen nothing but like outlaw country. And then I'll get back into, I'll listen to hardcore and I'll listen to some metal and so it really comes in waves. But you're talking about like Merle Haggard, and I have you ever we don't need to get into naming like bands and stuff like that, but the just that w- something that makes me feel like I'm in a different place is huge for me. And I don't most of the time, like for example, I ride a motorcycle. Most of the time when I ride my motorcycle, I don't listen to any music, right? I just like how it feels to be out there and on the road and doing my thing. But I feel like I have an internal soundtrack going while I'm riding. And there's like, okay, so there's a playlist on Spotify called Southern Gothic, right? and it's just kind of sad Southern style, some outlaw country, some and there's a whole bunch of really, really cool, and I almost have memorized that playlist because when I'm like working in my basement, like whether I'm doing leather work, whether I'm like remodeling, we built a room in our basement for our daughter, or if I'm, painting a room or something like that, I'll put this thing on repeat because it takes my mind onto like the road or into, a warm, dusty like town or something like that. And there's something really appealing to me about rustic, weathered things. And I mean, you could probably tell from like looking in my room that I'm in right now, I like antique style stuff, and that music to me feels very rustic and true and raw and weathered. And so it's right up my alley. I love that. And that wasn't something I realized that I loved until I was what I would consider to be an adult. Um, so it's funny how quickly things can change because there was a time when I wanted polished, you know, immediate, fast punk rock or hardcore or metal or whatever, or just or the dirtiest, grimiest, just disgusting punk to listen to. And then I go to wanting something more like this. And it just kind of how things evolve is interesting to talk about and think about.
It is, and it's like that, and that says something about you. You kind of described like how it makes you feel, how it kind of transcends you into a different, but what I wonder, like, what does some of the stuff I listen to say about me? Like I listen to a lot of like gothic vampire rock and stuff way,
Yeah. Yeah.
they're obviously like the Cure fans, most of them.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, I was even so inspired by it. I wrote like a weird album and I put it out. And it was like a synth type album with like the Cure type stuff. And it was all just vampire rock.
Yeah.
I don't
Dude,
get it, man. Like it's just that's what music does to you though, right? It just kind of like takes
right.
you to these weird places in your mind.
Yeah, and it scratches an itch for you that you maybe didn't even know was there. There's a piece, something, whether it's something nostalgic, I think that it finds that, or hits something that you maybe feel like you subconsciously feel like you were missing, where maybe you hear what you're referring to as vampire rock and you go, or metal or whatever you're calling it, and and there's a piece, maybe this certain tone brings you back to a certain place from your childhood or reminds you of something that you really liked about something that you would never be able to consciously connect those dots, but this did it for you. I listen to a lot of different types of hip hop and rap, but for some reason I will find, my wife calls it murder rap, where just stuff that maybe like kind of, it's not all I listen to, but like gross, like whether it's Brother Lynch Hung or Tech Nine or some of those guys where it's Hobson's a big one that I like. I've been listening to a lot of Prof lately, which is not what I would consider murder rap, but um where it's like intricate lyrics, but also about the most disgusting, weird shit that you can think of. And that's not me. That's not how I live my life, but I enjoy the music. I enjoy the aggression. I enjoy the I don't give a fuck attitude, So something in the way they make those songs scratches an itch in my brain, in my soul somewhere that I'm like, okay, this is cool. I like this for the moment. And you kind of move forward, I guess.
Well, it's like the inner Suge Knight in me, like I've always been obsessed with Death Row Records. When I
Hmm.
was a kid, it hit at that time. And so I was listening to, grunge and all of this rap. And it's like
Right.
I can't connect with anything that they're saying, but man, I can rap every single lyric and I love it. And it's like it's just something, yeah, it's like do I identify with wanting to kill somebody or, slap a hoe or anything like that? No, but I just dig the music. Like what they were saying was like, to me, it was like poetry, man. It was just like
Yeah.
they're just flat out telling us how life was for them. And I just think it's such a beautiful thing.
Agreed. Agreed. Yep. And not to mention, if you're a musician like we are, of any ilk, whether that you're a rapper, whether you're a producer, whether you're a guitar player, a drummer, bass player, whatever, you have an understanding for what it takes. And especially if you're in any kind of a, excuse me, production world, whether you're doing podcasting or audio or video or whatever, you understand what it takes to compile these things into something that sounds enjoyable and sounds good and isn't just, putting a tape deck in the middle of a garage and playing your song, which I've done, and most people who've been in any kind of a band have done, but you understand what it takes to create that. So, you know, the rap that we're listening to, or the metal that we're listening to, it's not like you just learn how to do that. Like, no, that's art, man. That's putting together 5, 6, 7 people, or 4, 2, 3, one, however many people are a part of that musical production, getting them together and then creating this sound, recording this sound, putting it together and producing it in a way that sounds enjoyable. Like, that's a feat. That is an art project. That is a something that should be, admired. So,
Well, they got an admirer in me. I mean, I
yeah.
it forever, man. I mean, for me, the West Coast sound and all that. I mean, I like all of it. I like East Coast, all that. Mob Deep. I can think of so many different, uh,
Yep.
you know, groups, artists, and everything else. But I hate to do this to us, Jeff, but I have to a pause here for sponsorship. They're not necessarily keeping the lights on, but they are uh, you know, feed me like Popeye with spinach. They're like giving me a little bit of, and then every time they do, I kind of just keep on going. So we're gonna pause right now, and for those of you bearded gentlemen out there, you're gonna look forward to the Elegant Sasquatch tap.
Hey there, grooming gurus. We've got something wild for you today.
That's right, folks. Get ready to tame the untamed with products that redefine the beard game. Introducing the Elegant Sasquatch Grooming Company.
Elegant Sasquatch, that sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it?
Well, grooming should be an adventure, my friend, and with these products, you'll embark on a journey to the grooming wilderness.
So, what makes the Elegant Sasquatch so unique?
It's all about taking your beard from beastly to beautifully wild. Picture this: you wake up and your beard looks like it just got back from a spa day. That's the magic of their high end beard balms.
Spa day for the beard? Sign me up. And let's not forget their beard butters and oils. It's like giving your beard a tropical vacation. I'm talking about a beach party for your facial hair.
A beach party for the beard. This company's got the best marketing ever.
Oh, but we're not done yet, folks. The Elegant Sasquatch Grooming Company also has beard washes that make shower time a majestic experience.
Showering with Sasquatch, that sounds like a reality show.
It does, but seriously, listeners, if you want to sophisticate your outer beast, head over to elegantsasquatchco.etsy.com and use the code SUPERSHOW at checkout for an exclusive discount of 20% off.
You can also find them on Facebook and Instagram. Check them out, like them, and while you're at it, tell them the Super Show sent you.
All right, we're back from our break, everybody. I hope you enjoyed our commercials. I hope you didn't fast forward through them and and really paid attention to some of this. The Elegant Sasquatch, once again, for all you bearded guys out there. We also got Sly Ink Tattoo here in Lincoln. Get those tattoos with Bryce. Stop going to Boring Becky's Ink Emporium and all that stuff. Also, you guys out there, we got Liberty Contracting. If you need a patio or something done, contact Stan. They're the best in Lincoln, and they'll pour you up a nice sidewalk or whatever the heck you need. And yeah, thank you guys for listening. Once again, we're getting back to it. I've got my guest here. We got Jeff Kalasky from Documentary
Yo.
podcast, and we've been getting a little weird. If you guys didn't hear the first half, then you're obviously living under a rock or something. So now please come out of that said rock and talk to us a little bit about.
Hi, welcome up from back under the rock, everybody.
But Jeff, we
Yeah.
talked about documentaries a little bit, and I want to get back to it. So, what is it about documentaries that you like the most? Like, why did you choose to do docs? Like, have you always been into it?
So documentaries are they're weird in their own way because everybody likes, well, I mean, and the majority of people like to sit and watch a film, right? Movies, entertainment. It's entertainment, right? So, but there's always been something for me about, and don't get me wrong, I'm just as much on the playing field of let's watch an entertaining movie, fully fictional and all that. But there's something very visceral and I don't think I want to use the word entertaining, even though it is. It's more of a, um, j- for lack of a better word, something very interesting to me about um, all of the different ways that you can tell a nonfiction story and present it to the public in so many different ways that it can either be scary or funny or so we grew up, or when I grew up, to me a documentary would be the last thing I would watch. It would be boring, right? You go to school and you watch a PBS documentary about the how the birds fly or whatever, and it's just so boring, and it's very educational and all that. Well, things have changed a lot in nonfiction filmmaking to where it's just as much of a, if not more, of a challenge to tell a real story, a a, a real experience, either before, during, or after, mostly during or after something happens, right? So whether I'm a filmmaker with a camera trying to hit every moment of anything, nothing's out of the question. Whether it's about a person and their life that's currently happening or their life that did happen, and how do we tell that story? How do we let people know that this is interesting? A documentary is something that when you sit down with somebody and you hear the whole story and you go, "Whoa, that was wild," right? How do I tell the world your story, the story that you just told me, because it's interesting, right? And when you look at the world in the way that a filmmaker does, or at least in a way that a film enthusiast does of any sort, then everything becomes a potential interesting documentary. You know, there's things that we've watched on our show and things that I've watched personally that, if presented in a different way, it would be standard. It would be boring. It would be nothing. But when you can take that and, like I said, show it to the world in a way that is so engaging that it makes me want to sit on the edge of my seat and wonder what's happening next and wonder, you know, what's gonna happen, that's entertainment. And it hits me on a different level because I can sit and I can watch, an action movie. And yeah, it's entertaining. Sorry, I shouldn't move my microphone stand. It's entertaining for the couple hours that I sit and watch it. And yeah, I got to appreciate how much money and time and effort and acting and all that went into everything. But the whole time that this isn't real. This isn't real life. Well, nonfiction films show us the real life. Now, it's not always an unbiased real life. It's the real life out of the perspective of how the filmmaker showed chose to believe, but that's just as entertaining. When we dissect a documentary on our show, we get to look at how did this filmmaker, a producer, a production crew, or however you want to look at it, how did they decide to tell this story? That's just as interesting as the story itself. When you and I watched The Devil on Trial, we watched we felt differently on the first half than we did on the second half because they chose to tell it from the perspective of some of the family during this possession of this small child and then moving into another man and the things that happened. Go watch the documentary so you know what happened. And then the second half from other people in that group. That's good storytelling, right? That's an interesting way to look at it. That changes our opinion throughout. And then at the end of the whole thing, a group like us gets to get together and talk about those things and even change our opinion again, potentially. And here we are, months after we've watched the documentary, still talking about it, and thinking about it. And that to me is what's incredible. So you asked me, why do I like documentaries? That's why. And it hits in such a different way than a fiction film. And when you're lucky enough to have a documentary that it's no secret to people that listen to my show, but when you have real footage, real audio, the actual people involved, and there with testimonies and interviews and things like that, that is what I want to see. I don't really care. I rarely ever watch the news. I don't care to necessarily hear Joe Blow sitting and telling the whole story. That has its place, sure, but that's not as interesting to me as hearing you tell your story. Here's the photos of me at this time. Here's the audio of me when this was happening, and I'm telling you the story from my perspective. That's everything. That's compelling to me. So long answer to a short question.
Look at the massively let's talk about this. Let's look at what Tiger King did, for example, right?
Uh-huh.
That came out at the perfect time, right? Where we're in the middle of COVID, everyone's sitting at home.
Huh?
Comes out and people are losing their minds over this documentary. And you were on the edge of your seat. Go back and watch it. It's still entertaining to this day, even though it's like me watching Game of Thrones for the 12th time.
Right.
I go back and I find something new each time that entertains me more and more. Do that with that. And that is such a great documentary, the way they did it. It's an interesting story. I mean, the cast of characters couldn't be more interesting in life, right? And that to me is screaming why a documentary is great. I was the kid in class that liked all the nerdy PBS, probably because I was bored with what they were saying in class. And here they're gonna roll in the VCR and the TV, and we're gonna watch National Geographic's something. But I love that stuff. And then when I went home, I loved watching like unsolved mysteries and that type of thing. And I would consider that kind of in the vein, obviously, of that type of deal. I mean, did you love unsolved mysteries as much? Do you still watch it to this day, like on Pluto?
No. And the main reason for that, and we talked about this on my show, is I can't stand a reenactment. I I love the concept of that show. I watched it growing up and it didn't seem to bother me, but as an adult, it just takes me so far out of it most of the time that it's hard for me to really get into it. I like the stories better than I like the actual show. So
Right. I think my answer to you on your show was that I actually like the weird, like the horrible acting and like the actors that look
yeah,
nothing like the actual people. It's
yeah.
fun game.
There yeah, there is definitely a B-list horror element to that, or B-list movie element, that if you're watching it to be entertained, or if you're watching it with well, I guess we watch it all to be entertained, but if you're watching it for the uh I guess the humor side of that and thinking that it's funny and that, then yeah, I could definitely get behind that. Um, but most of the time, if I'm in the mood to watch something like that, I tend to want it to come with a fairly with quite a bit of seriousness. I think that's just my preference. I want to hear the story. I want to see. It's just not as interesting to me to s- to be watching something happen, knowing that this is a reenactment of it happening. It's not the real thing happening. So it just kind of feels like I don't know. I feel like it loses something pretty important for me. But
I felt like they did a pretty good job with the with like the newer unsolved mysteries.
oh,
It was more of the true crime doc type deal.
mm,
A lot of it, man, when that music hits, it still like sends chills down my spine. Like it gives me that nostalgia, I think is what it is more than anything.
for sure. It's kind of like, you know, listen to the theme song to the X-Files or something and like ooh, this is good. But they're in that same vein. I would rather watch the X-Files where I know this is fiction. I know it's, you know, actors and that's the point. So I that's if I'm watching nonfiction, I'd prefer to see the real thing.
So do
As
you watch ghost docs? Do you watch ghost documentaries or shows? Like, are there any ghost shows that you find entertaining that you'll watch on a regular basis?
no, but I don't watch besides like Jeopardy, I don't watch very many shows on a regular basis. Um, you know, I so I am a very skeptical man, and when we talked about the devil on trial, that I made that pretty clear, I think. And I I like to remain as open as possible to ideas or to the thoughts, whether it's paranormal and ghosts and things like that. I just plain and simple don't believe in much of anything. And so when I think about the shows, my skepticism bubbles out so high that I don't get a whole lot out of them most of the time. I see them and I go, that guy or that girl or that person is a bad actor, or that could have been done with camera tricks, or that could, I I can't suspend my disbelief enough when they're selling it as truth. There's plenty of things I can suspend my disbelief about. I watch professional wrestling, or I used to watch a lot of professional wrestling, and I don't as much anymore. But like, I know what's quote unquote real and what's scripted. Is it real? Yeah. Is it scripted? Yeah. It's the kind of how it goes. But I know what I'm getting into here, and there's really no one trying to pull wool over my eyes or get me to believe something based on what they're showing on camera. And knowing how easy it is or how common it is to manipulate those things or to say you're feeling in a certain scenario, my bullshit radar just goes off like crazy. And that's not to take away from people that do believe in some of those things. And sometimes I don't think that it matters whether it's truly real or not. My sister, for example, she does tarot reading and things like that. And for me, when I think about stuff like that, my immediate reaction is, well, is that bullshit? Well, no, it's not. Not because I believe that there's some kind of spirit or energy that's telling you what cards are what, but I think it's more about the connection she has with the people who she's meeting with. Now, she might have a completely different thing to say to you. If you ever have her on your show, you should, because she's great to talk to and she's the best person in the world. Well, I yeah, she's my sister, so I can't really give her that much credit, but she's no, she's great. I'm just kidding. Um, but it's more about the connection she has with her client or the person she's doing the reading for, because and how she can use tarot as a conduit sort of to relate to them, to encourage them, to help them feel a little bit better about something. And does that come from a supernatural place? Maybe. Do I believe it comes from a supernatural place? No, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't. First of all, my opinion isn't always the right opinion. It's just mine. But also does it matter? I don't think it does. I don't think it matters whether or not the true meaning behind that is she somehow in touch with something supernatural that this other person can't see and she's able to convey that. Well, I don't know the answer to that. Do I, you know, I it's hard for me to articulate other than just to say I think that's a good way for her to connect with the person, and they collectively have a relationship that makes both of them feel better when they walk away more often than not. And I think that's a really good thing. So so anyway, all that said to say, no, I don't really have any TV shows or anything that I regularly watch that that involve ghosts or paranormal because of my feelings toward what they're portraying and what they're trying to get me to believe. And I think that's the big thing is we think we said it at the top of the show. I don't necessarily being told what to do. And if you're telling me to believe something based on how you feel, I need more than that. So, yeah.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean,
Yeah.
I appreciate the fact that you're so open about it. You know, so many people are so coy about it. They're so worried about everybody else's, feelings. Like it's not going to hurt my feelings if you don't believe in ghosts and I do. I
Right.
place too much emphasis on, kind of like our importance. We inflate our importance. Like our opinions are so
Mm,
everyone all the time. Like even as podcasters, right? Like here we are spitting a boatload of different ideas. I mean, in all reality, we inflate our importance on, if people want to listen and they want to agree, great. If they don't, good for you. That's fine.
right.
But
We put a certain level of importance on ourselves because we have a microphone in front of our face and we're recording it. We put it out in public like anyone's going to give a shit about what comes out of my mouth.
it just shows how crazy we really are,
Yeah. Yeah.
put a mic in front of us and here we are,
Uh-huh.
talking about all sorts of weird stuff. Well, I'm not going to ask you that. Yeah, I mean, you pretty much have covered it. I mean, I don't think you haven't really ever been in a haunting of any sort that you can remember or anything like that, have you?
So I'm willing to be a little bit vulnerable here, I think, with you and your listeners. Um, and I do think now I don't know what I attribute this to fully because as I mentioned earlier, I don't necessarily put a lot of true, belief in much of anything. But I will say that when I was younger, there I I did and I do feel like there was something, and the only reason I'm pausing is because I'm deciding how much I want to put out there as far as, my personal life and all that. But there was a certain place in my life, a place that I was forced to go to.
Mhm.
By forced it, you know, by parents and and whatnot that I feel like had a real darkness there. Now, this place was more often than not fine. It was a place that I normally felt safe. And as nighttime came, every time there was a darkness. And now I don't know if that was a young person feeling fear for some reason, if it was an intuitive thing that I was in tune to. As a kid, I attributed it to what some may refer to as spiritual warfare, um, or maybe a demonic presence of sorts. Um, so I don't consider it to have been a haunting necessarily. I wouldn't ever say that, but I do feel like whatever that was, whatever that darkness was, it put a feeling inside of me that was very real. So regardless of what was the cause of that, whether it was what some may believe to be a demon or some sort of an entity, whether some may believe it to have been just a child's fear of something unexplainable, because there wasn't it was attributed to, or it wasn't connected to anything necessarily. I wasn't afraid of the dark because I could be in the dark at other places and have no issues. I wasn't afraid of being by myself because sometimes I wasn't by myself and other times I would be by myself elsewhere. So it only happened at this one place where I had to spend the night and on the regular. Sometimes it was worse than others. And I still can't explain exactly what it was. But enough to make a young kid not be able to sleep, to wake up, to beg to not have to go there. And yeah, even talking about it kind of brings that sort of feeling up in my gut a little bit because it's reliving something that I consider to have been a dark time. And I can't really explain because there was no, you know, toward me that I'm aware of. There was no, abuse there. There was no mistreatment. There was no uh nothing that I can put a finger on that I can attribute this feeling to have come from.
Right.
Which normally, if I was the person listening to myself saying this, I'd go, well, what are you repressing? What are you not remembering? What are you not telling us? What was your relationship with the people that were around in that time? Those are the questions that I would want, but for my own sake, I know to the best that I can know things that for the most part, everything was okay until nighttime came in this one particular place. So do
And
you call that a haunting? Do you call that a you know, would somebody listening to your show say, guaranteed if we put an EMF meter and a, you know, spirit box and whatever in that room that you're in, you're gonna find that we got ourselves a real life ghost, maybe. I don't know. I had my mother is and was very um uh religious, and um I had pastors pray over me. I had oils put on my head. I had, all and everything short of them going to this place because they weren't welcome there to um you know whatever. And so yeah. And here's another funny part. I still go to that place somewhat regularly as an adult, and it's not completely gone, the feeling. I'm an adult and I can handle it differently and I have my own freedoms and things like that. So it doesn't what feels like immobilize me like it did when I was young, but it it's not gone. So there you
and
go.
I really appreciate you, being vulnerable and telling these
Sure.
stories. You're not alone, obviously. I mean, there's a lot of people out there with stories like this. You couldn't necessarily, one couldn't put their finger on it. It'd be ridiculous and say it's absolutely haunted, right? I mean, without any
Right.
proof, but it is, just watching your, I know the listener in audio form can't see, but I can see your body language. I can see, just how you changed even talking about it, you know what I mean? So I can tell that it affects you. And to me, that's when the BS, you can really tell when somebody's BSing when they're not. But man, your body language told it all to me, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying that you're lying. I'm saying like to me,
Yeah.
it showed me how true you were really being with me. Like, and I really do appreciate that, man. I
Sure.
don't know what it
For
was.
letting me.
It's interesting that you go there as an adult and you still can feel something there, but you don't feel it in the same way, but you do still feel something. I don't know what's going on in this place, but I hope I don't ever go there.
Well, and another kind of interesting thing I think about that. So my wife has been to this place as well, and she is someone who I would consider very in tune with her feelings and with the feeling of energies and things like that. And she does consider herself spiritual in a lot of ways, not in a lot of traditional ways, but um, she does believe in a, you know, I won't speak for her about what she truly believes in, but um, she does consider herself a spiritual person, and she's been there, and she even said, "There's something feels weird here," and I don't know if some of that, again, skepticism in myself cranks up just a little bit because I say I don't know if she was influenced by my behavior or the energy I was giving off in this place, or how maybe did I preempt that feeling in her by the discussions that we've had about my life and about my relationship there. And like, was she reading me? Which I do believe, I think science believes that we as human beings and we put off energies and we put off, certain vibrations and things like that. Is my wife more in tune to mine than to other people's? Very likely, so can she pick that up in me? Maybe. Or she's feeling whatever is there, right? Who am I to say what that is and what it is? And Cain, you said, I can't tell you with 100% certainty what it was. If you tried to tell me with 100% certainty, I wouldn't believe you. I would say, no, if I don't even know what it is, I'm not going to trust that you know what it is. So I appreciate you, not going, well, Jeff, actually what's going on there is this, that nobody can know that. And that's part of I think the interesting and for some people fun part about whether there's paranormal or anything like that. And um it might be all in the mind of the people that experience these things, that we know psychologically our brains can make us physically feel things that aren't really happening, right? But does that change the fact that that feeling is there? No, not at all. It doesn't. If I can have a dream that I'm falling, or if I can have a dream that I'm underwater and I feel like I can feel the thing, well, that means our brains are powerful enough to make us believe something is actually happening, even if it's not physically happening to us. Well, is there a difference there? Maybe physically, but that doesn't change how our brains received it and the effect it can have on us. So, whatever my child brain was feeling in this place, no matter what was the cause of it, even if it was a silly, childish thing, it affected me as a child to where it it did affect my day-to-day life for a time. And even now, how many years later, we're talking about it, and those feelings came back even a little bit just thinking about it. But again, it's easier to attribute that if it came out that something awful was happening to me in this place. Right. I believe with 100% of my being that nothing awful happened to me at this place. I don't think that's a repressed thing that I just blacked out. I do not think, I know that nothing bad happened to me in this place. And that would be easy to explain if it had, but it didn't. So here we sit not knowing what it is and never will.
Right. Well, there's something to be said about a feeling, right? I mean, I've had people report hauntings to me. I mean, I do paranormal investigation and different things. Through my show, I've had people report things to me in a neighborhood that I grew up in, where the neighborhood is apparently haunted everywhere, from one side to the other. And there's people who are so scared, the feelings they get, that they won't even drive close to the home that they were in. You know what I mean? Like that feeling comes back to them, and they truly believe it. And so that's where I find it hard to. I take everybody's accounts with a grain of salt. I like to look at it with extreme skepticism, but I also have to look at it with an honesty of, these people came to me. They're not looking for fortune or fame or anything. I'm not the Joe Rogan podcast. They're
Right.
I'm just a guy blabbing about ghosts and different things all the time. And they were like you have been today. They were upfront and open with me. They're vulnerable about something. And so I take their accounts extremely seriously. I with full certainty. Like I'm not going to sit here, and it would be ridiculous for any show or any person to just flat out say this place is haunted without actually looking into it. I can't say that their house that they were in was haunted because I was never there. I can't say that their accounts were true, but I have to look at what they're saying with a certain honesty, that not all people are bad, and I have to kind of go back to, have to have a little bit of hope in humanity, that we're not all completely nuts, right? And so
Yeah.
that's how I kind of look at it, I guess.
Yeah, and also understanding too, which I appreciate about the way that you conduct yourself during these conversations too, is that it doesn't really matter whether the place is truly haunted, or it doesn't really matter if what they believe to have happened or don't believe to have happened, if that's quote unquote real, because what matters is it was real to them. My story that I just told left me with a certain feeling, right? That's as real as it gets, but for between you and I, that's what. It doesn't matter if literally nothing happened to cause it, right?
Right.
Ghosts, demons, asbestos in the ceiling, whatever it was, it left me feeling a certain way. So it doesn't matter. I mean, I guess it matters if it's asbestos, because I might have mesothelioma right now, and I don't want that. But um, hopefully that's not the case. But the the truth is that every one of those stories that you talked about, it had an effect on that person. If that person is being true, which we have to, as listeners, as friends, as human beings who want to coexist with other human beings, we have to make an assumption, I think, that that person's not full of horse manure, and I think that if we take them at their word that that's how they're feeling, then it's as real as they say it is, in whatever way that means. Doesn't mean I have to believe in what you think it is, but I believe that whatever it was made you feel a certain way. And that's valid.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Your perception is your reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yep.
we've we've covered the bases on a lot of things. I'd love to have you back sometime, so we could
Yeah, anytime.
stuff. I really do enjoy you as a guest, but like all good things, this one good thing has to come to an end for now. So before we end, though, I'd like to give you the opportunity to promote whatever you'd like to promote or talk to about whatever you'd like to talk about before
Sure.
this thing.
Yeah. So like we said at the beginning, I have a podcast called Talkumentary. It's a show where we watch documentaries and then we get together and talk about them. We have almost 50 episodes up right now. We have taken a little bit of a hiatus, and trying to figure out what the show looks like moving forward. My sister and I also have a new podcast that will be coming out in April of this year, where we sit down with my mother every week, maybe even twice a week, and we talk about things that families talk about. My sister and I were blessed with a very good relationship with our mom, and as we grow older, we're noticing that not everybody had that that same experience. So we're just kind of trying to, casually bring that to the world, and don't know how people are going to feel about it. Don't really care because it's more for us. And if anyone benefits from it, then that's great. The show is called My Mama Done Told Me. So look up at My Mama Done Told Me on all the stuff. If this comes out before April 1st, then you won't find anything. But April 1st, we're going to have the first couple episodes go live. And so check us out. Also, Documentary. Yeah, so that at Documentary Podcast and all the stuff, all the they all have YouTubes and Facebook and Instagram and all the stuff that everybody has. And we have no sponsors or anything like that, so we'll figure that out someday.
Well, you can find them on all the things, just like you can find me on all the things. But Jeff, I really have become a fan of your show. I
Thank
listen to
you.
your show. I believe in your show, and I really do appreciate you being on, man. You've been a great guest.
It has been my pleasure, and it's been wonderful to talk to you. I appreciate you listening to my story and being a great host, man. Keep it going.
Thanks, man. And if your sister wants to be on the show, I'd love to have her on to talk a little
I
terror.
will. Yeah, I will tell her. I will tell her. I'm sure she'd love to.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for doing the show, and we'll see you on the other side.
All right. Thanks, Cain.